We often look at transformation as something that takes years, an entire lifetime of work, discipline, and sacrifice. But what if I told you that just 6 months of pure consistency could alter the course of your entire life? Not in theory, not in some distant future, but in real tangible ways that you can feel, measure, and see. The truth is, life doesn't change in giant leaps. It changes in small, repeated steps. Most people overestimate what they can do in a week, but underestimate what they can achieve in 6 months of focused, deliberate effort. 6 months may not seem like much on a calendar, but when you align your daily actions with your long-term vision, those 180 days become a foundation for transformation. Think of it like planting a seed. If you water it once and walk away, nothing happens. If you water it inconsistently, some days you do, some days you don't, the seed struggles to grow. But if you commit every single day without fail, in 6 months, you'll see roots firmly in place and growth that others can't ignore. That's the power of consistency. It applies to every aspect of life. In your health, imagine showing up to the gym 3 times a week for 6 months. You won't just lose weight, you'll build habits, endurance, and confidence. In your career, imagine committing to learning a new skill, reading a book every week, or networking intentionally. The opportunities you thought were distant suddenly become attainable. In relationships, imagine being consistent with kindness, listening, and presence. 6 months later, your connections will feel deeper and stronger than ever. Consistency isn't glamorous, it's not exciting, it's repetitive, often boring, and sometimes even frustrating. But it's also the very thing that separates those who dream from those who achieve. The question isn't whether 6 months can transform your life. The real question is, are you willing to show up every single day, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it feels like nothing is happening, even when nobody is watching? Because 6 months from now, you will arrive somewhere. The version of yourself you meet depends entirely on the choices you make today. If you choose discipline, small actions, and unwavering consistency, you'll look back and realize that half a year was all it took to rewrite the trajectory of your life. Transformation is not about intensity, it's about consistency, and 6 months is all the proof you need. 5 keynotes of the speech: transformation comes not from giant leaps, but from small, repeated daily actions. 6 months of consistent effort can create results that feel life-changing and lasting. Consistency builds habits, confidence, and momentum in every area of life: health, career, and relationships. True progress requires discipline and commitment, even when results aren't immediately visible. 6 months from now, your future self will reflect the choices and consistency you commit to today. Transformation comes not from giant leaps, but from small, repeated daily actions. This idea sounds simple, yet it is one of the hardest truths to fully embrace because our minds are wired to seek immediate gratification. We crave visible results. We want to see dramatic shifts, the kind that can be captured in a single picture or summarized in a few words. But the reality of growth, whether it's personal, professional, or emotional, lies in the accumulation of tiny efforts that stack up over time. It is not the grand gesture that changes your life, but the commitment to keep showing up when no one notices. When we imagine transformation, we often picture sudden breakthroughs: winning a promotion, launching a business, achieving a fitness goal, or suddenly finding clarity in life. But breakthroughs rarely happen by accident. They are the inevitable result of consistent actions built quietly in the background. Think about how water shapes rock. A single drop has no power, but over time, countless drops carve valleys and reshape landscapes. Human change works the same way. Each choice we make, each small effort we repeat, wears down resistance, builds new habits, and gradually reshapes the trajectory of our lives. The problem is, most people overestimate what they can accomplish in a short period and underestimate what they can do with steady effort over months or years. They try to sprint their way to success, pouring all their energy into a short burst, only to collapse in exhaustion when results don't appear instantly. This is why so many resolutions, goals, and plans fail within weeks. We expect transformation to feel dramatic, but in truth, it feels mundane. It's choosing to read 10 pages of a book today, even when you'd rather scroll your phone. It's deciding to cook a healthy meal instead of reaching for something quick. It's showing up for your work consistently, even when motivation fades. These actions feel small, almost invisible. Yet over time, they create the very changes people marvel at. The beauty of small, repeated daily actions is that they are accessible to everyone. You don't need extraordinary talent, massive resources, or perfect timing. What you need is discipline and the willingness to embrace simplicity. If you look at anyone who has achieved mastery in their craft, you'll notice a common thread: consistency in small practices. A writer doesn't produce a novel by waiting for inspiration. They sit down to write a page every day. An athlete doesn't build strength by one heroic workout. They grow through thousands of disciplined repetitions. A leader doesn't earn trust in a single speech. They build it by showing up, listening, and delivering over and over again. What makes this principle so powerful is the compound effect. Each small action on its own may feel insignificant, but when repeated daily, it compounds into exponential results. Just like money invested consistently grows through compound interest, your actions build momentum that multiplies with time. For example, exercising for 30 minutes may not change your health in one day, but 6 months of daily commitment could transform your body, energy, and confidence. Reading a few pages may not expand your knowledge instantly, but 6 months of daily reading could reshape the way you think and the opportunities you attract. There's also a psychological shift that happens when you commit to small daily actions. Every time you follow through on a promise you make to yourself, you reinforce your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, someone who is disciplined, someone capable of change. This shift in self-image is more important than the results themselves, because once you believe you are the kind of person who shows up consistently, your behavior aligns with that belief. Transformation then becomes not just about what you achieve, but who you become in the process. Of course, this is not easy. Small actions are deceptively difficult because they lack drama. Skipping one day feels harmless. Neglecting a habit seems insignificant. But just as consistency creates growth and consistency creates decline, the small decisions you make each day, whether to act or to neglect, pull you closer to or further from the life you want. Every day is a vote for the person you wish to become, and those votes accumulate whether you're conscious of them or not. So the truth is, this transformation doesn't demand that you leap, it asks that you step. Not once, not twice, but over and over again. And when you look back after 6 months of small, repeated daily actions, you'll realize the leap you were searching for wasn't a single moment at all. It was the sum of all those steps. That is how real lasting transformation is created. 6 months of consistent effort can create results that feel life-changing and lasting, yet many people dismiss this possibility because half a year sounds too short to bring about real transformation. The truth is that 6 months is not just a block of time, it is 180 opportunities to show up, to practice, and to improve. When we view 6 months as a daily commitment rather than an abstract number, the power it holds becomes clearer. Most people underestimate what they can achieve in this period because they are distracted by the need for instant gratification. They expect immediate returns for their actions. And when those returns don't appear within a week or two, they assume the effort is wasted. But 6 months of steady progress is long enough for small actions to compound into meaningful change that not only alters your results, but reshapes your perspective on what is possible. Think about how habits are formed. Neuroscience tells us that repeated behavior strengthens neural pathways in the brain, making those actions easier and more natural over time. At first, committing to something daily may feel unnatural, almost forced. But with repetition, what once required effort becomes automatic. 6 months is long enough for a new habit to not only form, but to take root deeply, so it no longer feels like a struggle to maintain. Whether it is exercising, reading, journaling, meditating, or working on a skill, by the end of 6 months, the action stops being a choice and starts becoming part of your identity. That identity shift is what makes the change lasting. Another important aspect of 6 months of consistency is momentum. In the beginning, progress is slow and nearly invisible. You may work for weeks without seeing results. This is the stage where most people give up because they mistake a lack of visible change for a lack of progress. But the truth is that progress often happens beneath the surface, where it cannot yet be measured. Just like a seed underground develops roots before it breaks through the soil, your efforts in the first few weeks lay a foundation for breakthroughs later. By the time you reach the halfway point of 6 months, the compounding effect begins to show. You see the weight dropping, the strength building, the skills sharpening, or the opportunities appearing. This visible progress fuels motivation. And the second half of the journey accelerates because the results begin reinforcing the effort. 6 months also gives you time to experience setbacks and recover from them. In shorter periods, one mistake can feel devastating. But over 6 months, the perspective changes. You realize that one missed day is insignificant in the larger picture. What matters is returning to the habit the next day. This builds resilience and teaches you that transformation does not require perfection, only persistence. Over time, this mindset shift is more valuable than the results themselves because it equips you to handle challenges beyond the 6 months. You learn that consistency is not about never failing, but about always returning. The emotional impact of 6 months of effort should not be overlooked. When you dedicate yourself to something consistently for half a year, you begin to feel proud of the discipline itself, regardless of the outcome. That pride builds confidence, and confidence creates opportunities. Employers notice your growth, friends and family notice your discipline, and you notice the shift in how you carry yourself. Confidence is magnetic, and it attracts opportunities that may not have existed when you began. Thus, the results of 6 months are not only in physical or measurable outcomes, but in the unseen doors that open because of the person you become. The lasting nature of change after 6 months lies in the principle of identity. By then, you are no longer someone trying to build a habit. You are someone who already lives that habit. You no longer have to convince yourself to show up because the thought of not showing up feels unnatural. At this point, your transformation is sustainable because it is no longer about effort, but about who you are. This is why 6 months of consistency can feel life-changing. It alters not just your behavior, but your self-perception. When you step back and evaluate, 6 months is a small fraction of your life, yet its impact can ripple outward for years to come. Imagine the difference in your career if you committed 6 months to deep learning. Imagine the difference in your health if you committed 6 months to consistent exercise and nutrition. Imagine the difference in your relationships if you invested 6 months in being present and intentional. These changes do not end after half a year. They set the stage for a new way of living. 6 months is not the finish line. It is the turning point. It proves to you that change is possible and sustainable. And once you see what is possible in 6 months, your vision of what is possible in a year or a decade expands dramatically. Consistency builds habits, confidence, and momentum in every area of life, health, career, and relationships. At first, the word consistency might sound dull, like it strips life of spontaneity. But when we look closer, we see that consistency is not about repetition for its own sake. It is about building patterns of behavior that serve us, shaping the direction of our lives in ways that become almost automatic. The human brain thrives on routine because it conserves energy when it no longer has to make decisions about every little action. When you commit to consistent actions, you are training your brain to follow a path without resistance. Over time, that path becomes the foundation of habits that define who you are and how you live. In health, consistency is often the dividing line between temporary results and lasting well-being. A single workout does very little, but showing up regularly changes not just your body, but also your mindset. Each time you exercise, you cast a vote for being someone who values health. At first, the body might resist, but with consistency, endurance builds, strength grows, and even your relationship with food and rest evolves. Over 6 months, this consistency rewires not only your muscles, but your identity. You are no longer a person trying to get fit. You become someone who is fit because it is simply part of how you live. This is why consistency matters more than intensity, because the goal is not to burn out in a sprint, but to create habits that last for years. In your career, consistency can be the most underestimated tool for advancement. Many believe career growth comes from dramatic achievements or sudden opportunities, but more often it is built on small, steady actions, showing up prepared, learning continuously, and delivering reliably. Colleagues and leaders learn to trust you not because of one moment of brilliance, but because of repeated proof that you follow through. Over time, this reliability builds credibility, and credibility attracts opportunities. Consistency in learning, whether through reading, practice, or mentorship, compounds into expertise, and expertise is what sets you apart in competitive environments. In just 6 months, dedicating time each day to improving a skill can position you ahead of where you were for years before. Relationships too thrive on consistency. Grand gestures may feel powerful, but it is the daily consistent choices, listening, showing kindness, being present, that truly strengthen connections. Imagine a friend who checks in once every 6 months with a lavish gift but is absent otherwise, compared to one who shows up regularly, offers support in small ways, and remembers the details of your life. The second friend earns trust and loyalty because consistency communicates care. In family life, being consistently present, even in small interactions, builds bonds that last a lifetime. Children, partners, and friends do not measure love by isolated acts. They measure it by repeated evidence that you care. In this way, consistency becomes the quiet language of love and trust. Confidence is another gift of consistency. Each time you repeat an action, you gain proof that you are capable. Confidence does not appear from thin air. It is built by stacking evidence of your own competence. When you consistently deliver on your promises, even small ones to yourself, you strengthen your belief that you can rely on yourself. Over time, this belief radiates outward. Others begin to notice the quiet assurance that comes from repeated practice and achievement. Confidence is not arrogance. It is the calm knowledge that you have prepared, that you have practiced, and that you can handle what comes your way. 6 months of consistent action in any area will give you not just results, but also this inner stability. Momentum is perhaps the most powerful outcome of consistency because it turns effort into energy. At the start of any journey, the hardest part is beginning. The resistance is high, the progress invisible. But when you push through those early days and build consistency, you create momentum that makes future actions easier. Just as a snowball grows as it rolls down a hill, each consistent effort adds weight and speed to your progress. Soon, what once felt difficult becomes natural, and what once felt impossible becomes routine. This momentum carries you forward, often faster than you imagined, because small wins stack into larger victories. When consistency touches health, career, and relationships, the effects ripple into every other part of life. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, someone who can be trusted, someone who creates progress. This identity shift changes the way you act and the way others respond to you. Over 6 months, the habits you build anchor your growth, the confidence you gain fuels your courage, and the momentum you create accelerates your journey. What began as small, repeated actions transforms into a cycle of progress that feeds itself. This is the quiet, powerful force of consistency. It does not just change what you do, it changes who you are, and in doing so, it touches every corner of your life. True progress requires discipline and commitment, even when results aren't immediately visible. This is one of the hardest lessons for anyone pursuing growth because we live in a world that constantly glorifies speed and instant outcomes. We are surrounded by stories of overnight success, before and after transformations, and seemingly effortless achievements, but the reality behind every success story is far less glamorous. Real progress is often invisible at first. It happens in the quiet, in the repetitive actions no one sees, and in the commitment to keep going long after the initial excitement has faded. Discipline is the bridge between intention and achievement, and commitment is what holds us steady when motivation begins to fade. In the early stages of any pursuit, the energy is high. A new project, a new goal, or a fresh habit carries excitement. You feel motivated, inspired, and full of possibility. But motivation is temporary. It fluctuates with mood, energy, and circumstance. Discipline, on the other hand, is not dependent on how you feel. Discipline is doing what needs to be done even when you don't feel like it. It is waking up to exercise when you would rather sleep in. It is studying when you would rather be entertained. It is practicing when progress feels slow. Discipline removes the decision-making process from the equation because the choice has already been made. You show up regardless of mood or convenience. Commitment works hand in hand with discipline. Commitment is the promise you make to yourself and keep even when no one else would notice if you gave up. It is easy to commit when the path is smooth, but the true test comes when progress stalls. There will always be periods where the results are not visible, where the effort seems wasted, and where doubt whispers that you are not moving forward. This is the space where most people quit, not because they are incapable, but because they misinterpret the absence of visible results as the absence of progress. In reality, these invisible phases are when the most important changes are taking place beneath the surface. Think of a bamboo tree. For years after planting the seed, nothing appears above the soil. It seems like nothing is happening. But beneath the ground, roots are spreading, anchoring the tree for the massive growth that is to come. And then, suddenly, in a matter of weeks, the bamboo shoots upward at an astonishing rate. The growth was never sudden. It was the invisible work beneath the surface that prepared the way. Human progress follows the same pattern. Discipline and commitment during the invisible phase ensure that when results finally appear, they are strong, sustainable, and meaningful. This principle applies to every area of life. In health, you may work out for weeks before seeing any visible change in your body. But discipline ensures you keep going, and commitment anchors you when the scale doesn't reflect your effort. In career growth, you might spend months learning, networking, and creating without recognition. But the invisible skills you develop and the trust you build will eventually translate into opportunities that others call luck. In relationships, consistently showing up, listening, and being present may not yield immediate transformation, but over time it creates bonds of trust and depth that cannot be built overnight. The absence of visible results is not a signal to stop, it is a signal to persist. Progress often accumulates quietly until it reaches a tipping point where change becomes undeniable. Without discipline, you never reach that tipping point. Without commitment, you abandon the process just before the breakthrough. That is why so many people feel stuck in cycles of starting over. They lack the willingness to stay the course through the invisible stages of progress. Discipline also trains resilience. Every time you act despite discomfort, you strengthen the muscle of self-control. You teach yourself that your actions are not governed by fleeting emotions, but by deliberate choice. This resilience becomes a powerful tool in every area of life because challenges are inevitable. When obstacles arise, it is not motivation that gets you through. It is the ingrained discipline to act regardless of circumstances. Commitment fuels this resilience by reminding you of the deeper reason behind your actions. When you are committed, you are not chasing quick results, you are investing in a vision of who you want to become. The irony is that once discipline and commitment carry you through the invisible stages, the results eventually become visible, and people will call it transformation. They will see the visible outcomes without realizing the months of unseen effort that created them. But you will know that progress was never about sudden leaps, but about the steady steps you took every day, anchored by discipline and guided by commitment. And that knowledge will empower you, because once you experience the power of consistent discipline, you understand that there is nothing you cannot build, sustain, or transform if you are willing to stay the course long enough. 6 months from now, your future self will reflect the choices and consistency you commit to today. This idea is simple but powerful because it reminds us that the life we are living is never the product of one big decision, but the outcome of countless small choices made day after day. Every action you take, whether large or small, is shaping the person you are becoming. Often we forget this because the effects of our daily choices are not immediately visible. Eating one unhealthy meal doesn't destroy your health, skipping one workout doesn't erase your progress, and procrastinating for one day doesn't ruin your career. But over time, repeated choices accumulate, and the pattern they create eventually defines who you are. 6 months may seem like a short span, but it is more than enough time for those accumulated choices to shape a new version of yourself. What you choose to do consistently today determines what you will be capable of tomorrow. Imagine 2 versions of yourself, 6 months apart. One version continues as usual with habits that don't change and patterns that remain the same. The other commits to steady, consistent actions aligned with growth. The difference between the two might not be visible in a week or even a month, but by the 6-month mark, the gap is undeniable. The consistent version of you is healthier, more confident, more skilled, and more prepared for opportunities. The inconsistent version looks back and wonders where the time went. The reality is that both versions arrive at 6 months, but only one arrives transformed. The beauty of this principle is that you always have the power to decide which version of yourself you are building. Life will move forward regardless. Time will pass whether you act or not. 6 months will come, and the only question is, who will you be when it arrives? Every choice you make today is like casting a vote for the person you want to become. Each workout is a vote for health. Each page you read is a vote for wisdom. Each hour of focused work is a vote for growth. And each act of kindness is a vote for stronger relationships. No single vote defines you, but together they accumulate into undeniable evidence of your identity. This is why consistency is more important than perfection. You do not need to make flawless choices every single day. What matters is that the majority of your choices align with the person you want to become. Missing one day, one effort, or one habit will not undo your progress, but repeatedly choosing not to show up will. 6 months of mostly consistent effort will always outweigh 6 months of sporadic bursts. The future self you create is not shaped by intensity, but by repetition. It is the person who shows up, even imperfectly, who reaps the rewards when 6 months have passed. Another important aspect is that your future self is not just about results, but about identity. 6 months of consistent action reshapes the way you see yourself. If you write every day for half a year, you no longer simply tell yourself you want to be a writer, you are a writer. If you exercise regularly, you no longer think of yourself as someone trying to get fit, you are someone who lives a healthy lifestyle. If you practice kindness and presence in your relationships, you no longer aim to be supportive, you are already a supportive partner, parent, or friend. These identity shifts matter because they determine how you act in the future. Once you see yourself in a new light, your actions naturally align with that self-image, reinforcing the cycle of growth. It is also worth remembering that the choices you make today don't just affect your own life, they ripple outward. 6 months of growth in your health inspires those around you. 6 months of dedication in your work influences colleagues and sets an example. 6 months of consistent love and presence in relationships strengthens not only your bonds, but also the environment in which others thrive. Your future self is not isolated. It impacts and shapes the future selves of those around you. The responsibility of consistency is not only personal, but also collective, because the transformation you create in yourself has the power to transform your family, your community, and even your work environment. When you stand 6 months from now, the version of yourself that appears will not be a mystery. It will be the predictable outcome of the daily decisions you made starting today. You will not become stronger, wiser, or more fulfilled by accident. You will become that way because you built yourself into it, day by day, choice by choice. The good news is that you don't need to wait for the perfect moment or the perfect plan to begin. You only need to start and then keep showing up. The future you are building is not far away. It is only 180 days from now. And when those days pass, the person you meet will be the clearest reflection of how seriously you took the responsibility of today. 6 months may not sound like much, but when lived with intention, discipline, and consistency, it becomes enough to rewrite the trajectory of your life. Transformation is not reserved for a distant future, nor is it dependent on extraordinary talent or luck. It is built in the ordinary. Daily choices that compound into something extraordinary over time. Every step you take, every habit you build, and every moment you choose consistency over convenience is an investment in the person you are becoming. The truth is, 6 months will pass whether you take action or not. The question is not if the time will move forward. The question is who you will be when it does. Will you arrive at the next 6 months unchanged? Or will you look back and see the undeniable growth that discipline and commitment created? The answer depends on the decisions you make today and the willingness to stay consistent even when results are invisible. Transformation is not about waiting for the perfect moment or making a single leap. It is about showing up day after day with small actions that align with the person you want to be. 6 months from now, you will meet a version of yourself. Make sure it is the version you'll be proud of.